Let us start with the manuscript writing module. My name is Madhankumar. I'm a grants advisor at the Wellcome Trust DBT India Alliance. And as part of my job, we advise applicants to prepare and submit competitive fellowships. And once they get awarded with the fellowships, we also help with the administration of these awards for the duration of the fellowship. And I'm also one of the SciComm workshop coordinators. So those of you who have written manuscripts, was it fun? Did you enjoy writing your manuscript? No, that's a strong no. Why was it? Because in a manuscript, it has to be, a highly standard, elegant way of writing. It has to be of high quality, internationally acceptable, widely readable, understandable, and reproducible, right? So there are all these clauses that come into written form of science communication, which makes manuscript writing not that much fun. And it's not just you who thinks manuscript writing is not fun. Even Francis Crick said, there is no form of prose more difficult to understand and more tedious to read than the average scientific paper. So it appears that he didn't have fun writing manuscripts either. Deficiencies in manuscript preparation are more frequent than mistakes in study design and execution. I personally like this one where Katharina said, manuscript, 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 or manuscript, however you want to call it, and so on. So it's this vicious cycle of writing, rewriting, getting rejected, making revisions, submitting again. So if it's not so much fun, why should we even bother doing it? Why is writing manuscripts important? Okay, let me again make a disclaimer. There's nothing new that you're going to hear from me today. It's just a rehash of what you already know. It's just a quick refresher of the do's and don'ts. The manuscript is a source of lasting reference, not just for you, but also for other people who are working in similar fields, right? And by conveying your results, what you're doing is to help modern science evolve, because you took somebody else's data, made sense out of it, and then you planned your experiments, and that's how modern science evolves. And it's also a measure of academic productivity, right? There are very few measures by which academic productivity can be determined. So there's this mantra that they say, publish, publish, and publish more. That's the three-step way to success in an academic field. Okay, so we all agree that although manuscript writing is not fun, we have to do for these reasons, to help modern science evolve, to show to the world that we are academically competent. When do you choose to write a manuscript? So those of you who wrote manuscripts or thinking of writing, how do you choose the timing of your manuscript? When you've crossed the 4th year of your PhD, or your boss is just standing behind you and saying, no, you have to write now. Depending on the completion of your work, right? So it would definitely depend on how much data is available. But again, it's not just the quantity of the data, not 3 hard disks of data. You have to wait for the 4th hard disk, no. You should have a comprehensive story to tell. So it has to be a complete story where all the pieces of the puzzle fit together to say a compelling story. And is it an extremely novel finding? And is there a possibility of competition, right? If you're in a very competitive sub-area and you want to publish quickly to show to the world that this has been the novel angle to your work, it may not be possible for you to wait to accumulate more data to expand your work and publish, because there's a possibility of getting scooped, and it's a race after all. So there might be a factor of competition involved. So that would determine when you have to write your manuscript. And in some cultures, there might be a desperate need for publication. I know in Finland that you cannot finish your PhD till you have you're a co-author on 5 publications or the leading author on at least 3 publications. So when there are administrative requirements like this, you are in a desperate need for publication. So, but the most important point I would stress on is whether or not you have a comprehensive story to tell, right? So which journal do you choose? Is the choice of journal important, or whatever comes on the first page of Google search is what? The choice is important, right? Because the audience, we've been talking about this over and over again. Here also the audience is important. So how do you choose a journal? Just search journal name, impact factor? On the basis of indexing, right? So you know the field best. You do an objective assessment of your data, and you know the standing of your story in the field. Right? So it depends on what your story is and who the target audience are going to be. That's how the choice of journal has to be made, not based on impact factors. So only when you choose based on your standing in the scientific field, there is going to be a huge readership, there's going to be huge impact of your work that is going to be felt in the field. So sometimes if you're not sure, you might look for calls for papers. Some journals release calls for papers routinely on certain topics. They ask people to submit manuscripts on such topics. Or another way would be to go back to your reference list and see where people have published similar stories. If you're not clear where to publish it, just go and see where people have published similar stories, and that would give you an idea. If you have a fair idea, just Google the journal, look at its aims and scope. And these are generally very clearly prescribed for each journal, very well, very clearly outlined in the website. So here's an example. This journal publishes papers based on original research that are judged to make a novel and important contribution to understanding the molecular and cellular basis of biological processes. So molecular and cellular basis of biological processes is a very wide topic, right? It can cover a lot. Let's look at this. This journal publishes information on physical, pharmacological, in vitro, and clinical properties of individual antimicrobial agents. So if you're not working with antimicrobial agents, don't come to us. So what I'm trying to say is the scope of the journal can be as general and wide as this, or it can be as narrow or even narrower than this. So you'll have to see that your work fits this definition or this two-line statement. And you might also have to consider turnaround times. What are turnaround times? Submit, get rejected, make revisions, submit again, do some more experiments. So this cycle is going to take long. And in cases where you have a desperate need for publication, you might not want to choose journals which have notoriously long turnaround times, right? So it would be a good idea to contact editors before submission, be it a question on the scope of the journal or the turnaround time. If you're not clear, you can write to the journal editor, and they're generally very responsive, and they would give you clear information saying, okay, if this is your story, this does not fit in the scope, or if you're in a hurry to publish, we are not the journal you should be looking for. Okay? Let's say you've arrived at a perfect timing and a perfect journal, the destination for your manuscript. How do you go about gathering information and writing? Are there any points that you should, like the general pointers that you should bear in mind before actually putting your Word document together? The first place I would suggest is to go and read instructions to authors. These are very clearly defined instructions, and they're very journal specific. They have very detailed instructions as to what font size you should use, what spacing you should use, how many figures are allowed, how many tables are allowed, what the word count has to be, how acknowledgements have to be made, how author contributions have to be specified, and so on. So please pay religious attention to instructions to authors and format specifications. The internet is a wide source of how to write manuscripts. There are also a lot of tutorials out there which tell you how not to write a manuscript or the points you have to avoid while writing manuscripts. Use of language. Should you pay attention to this? Or, as somebody was pointing out in the morning, it's just the technical content that is important. Use of language has to be considered, right? So, because the reader is investing a significant amount of time and effort into reading what you're trying to say, if there is no coherent flow, if there is no clarity, then it's a waste of everyone's time. So we are all not native speakers. So some of us have good command over the language, some of us don't. In case you don't have a good command over language, try to get help from somebody who does. And it comes with practice. If you can write, rewrite, get feedback, improve your version again, and proceed. Should you consider what voice you should use? Active voice, passive voice? Which one do we generally use? Passive voice. And why is that? Is it because we just want to confuse the heck out of everybody, or? Okay, so the basic idea is the focus is on the verb, what has been done, rather than who did it. Of course, it matters who has done it, but the major emphasis is on the verb rather than the subject, which is why it's preferred to write a passive voice. But at some cases, passive voice comes with an inherent confusion to its structure, because let's say it is believed that protein X causes, or this mutation causes this disease. So in this sentence, it's not clear who believes it. Is it the entire society? Is it your group? Or is it you? Or is it your rival? So this kind of an ambiguity is inbuilt with the passive voice, but you have to be careful while using it. We still tend to use passive voice, although it comes with this inherent ambiguity. The usage of tense, past tense versus present tense, which is generally used? Past. And is it 100% past tense? And there's also present tense, right? So we use present tense for when you're For example, talking about something that will hold good for a long duration of time, atemporal facts, models, hypotheses, conclusions, which are not time specific. So there we also use present tense. Do we also use future tense? Yes, when you talk about the future outlook of your work, what can be done. So let's say it's mostly past tense, a few instances of present tense, and fewer instances of future tense. There should strictly be no incorrect grammar, typos, or any other formatting issues or spelling mistake. So it might be a very beautiful hypothesis supported by excellent data, but if it's not proofread and if it's infested with typos and grammatical errors, it's going to be a huge turnoff both for the editor and for the reviewer, right? So this is not a trivial thing, so please pay attention to spelling and grammar. So we are going to talk about the anatomy of a research manuscript, which is generally applicable for biological manuscripts, but I think it can also be extrapolated to other fields. So what forms, the core of the manuscript are these sections: title, abstract, introduction, materials and methods, results, discussion, conclusion. So this is not some kind of an arbitrary order that somebody came up with. This is how, at least starting from introduction, this is how your work progresses through time. Okay, so which of these is the most important aspect of a manuscript? Abstract. How many of you think it's the abstract? Discussion, conclusion. Materials and methods. That's the most important. Okay. So, okay. How many of you think the title is the most important? Yes. The title is the most important, right? So it gives the first, it's like the teaser promo, and then the abstract is the trailer, and then the rest is the main picture. So the teaser promo has to be as well written as possible. So how would you like a title to be? It has to be? It is an abstract of an abstract. So whatever you're trying to convey in an abstract, you try and put it in a few phrases in a title. Right? So generally journals come with word counts or character counts for titles, so you have a very limited space for writing that. It might not be possible to write complete sentences, you might have to have phrases. So you have to strike a balance here if you want to write a really good title. You have to have a balance between conciseness, it has to be concise, and at the same time informative, right? It has to be a balance. And it has to be catchy, because the reader is going to invest maybe 15 seconds reading the title, and those 15 seconds will decide whether he's going to read the rest of the article. So it has to be catchy, but at the same time it should not be dishonest. For the sake of being catchy, you cannot afford to be dishonest. So you have to have a balance between conciseness, informativeness, catchiness, and honesty, right? So that's how you come up with the title. So let's say you're writing the title of your first manuscript. How are you going to, and you have no clue how to bring in all these factors? What would you do? One way would be to write 7 or 8, ask people for feedback, or you go to similar publications where people have reported similar stories, and then you will have a wide array of titles to choose from. Don't plagiarize, don't copy exactly the same title, but be inspired by titles that catch your attention. Okay? So apart from all this, there are also some sections of the manuscript which generally are supplementary to the main content of the manuscript, but they also have an additional role of breaking the monotony of the manuscript. Tables, figures and legends, author contributions, acknowledgements, and references, they're as important as the main text itself. So we'll come to each of this in a little bit. So let's start with the abstract of a manuscript. The role of an abstract is to persuade the reader to continue. You spent 15 seconds reading your title, and he has come to the abstract, right? And in many journals, it's only the title and the abstract that get, in many databases, it's only the title and the abstract that get indexed, right? You might not get access to the full article in the first go, but the abstract is what is getting indexed. And it's, I don't know if you discussed the elevator pitch in the morning. It's some sort of an elevator pitch to your entire story. So it has to be, the words have to be chosen with extreme caution, right? And abstracts also have word limits, generally 200 words or 250 words or 300 words, depending on the journal, and it's going to grab the reader's attention. So it has to convince the reader that this is worth spending my time. So what do you generally include in an abstract? Let's see. Of course, the problem, why this work has to be done, the background to the work, the purpose, what is it aiming to address, what methods have you used. If these are going to be routine methods, you don't have to talk about all of them, but if it's a major method that forms the backbone of the work, and the author and the reader has to know it in the first instance, you write a little bit about the methods, you write the major findings. Here the key word is major, right? You don't go about writing all your results here, and there's no space also. So you talk about only the major findings. What do you make out of the findings? What are your interpretations, right? So do we leave it at that, or do we also write something else? Okay, this is what I wanted to do, this is what I did, this is how I did it, and this is what I found, and this is what I infer out of it. Yeah. There has to be implications. Why should the world care about what you did and what you found and what you infer out of it, right? So you have to write a sentence or two about the implications as well to make a complete abstract. So let's say you write 1 or 1.5 sentences for each of these six subheadings. You will get a beautifully written abstract generally. So an introduction section is very important because it's going to orient the reader who is not familiar with the field into that particular topic. And it's also going to give a glimpse of what to expect from the remainder of the paper, right? So let's read this little story here. I'm so excited about telling you this great story. My father is on the front lawn cleaning the lawnmower. My sister is in the kitchen making a cake. My mom has gone shopping and I'm playing the electric guitar in my bedroom. Do you like my story? No? It's a great story. What's that you're saying? My story has no plot? See, it describes my family's activities starting with my father. We all have something in common, family ties, we live under one roof, etc. So this is a way of showing that we all have family ties, just throwing these facts. Let's look at this equivalent here. In the characterization of protein XYZ, this researcher did this, that researcher did that in Germany, so-and-so is doing something else, and I'm doing this particular thing because it's interesting and nobody has done it before. Do you see some kind of an analogy here? This is what you read in many manuscripts, right? They just, in the introduction section, they throw different facts, what other people have found, and then they say, but this is open and we have not, and it's interesting, nobody has looked at it. That's not a very compelling introduction. Let's see how this can be rephrased now. I'm so excited about telling you this great story. My father is on the front lawn cleaning the lawnmower, and do you know what that means? Trouble. He hates it. He wants everyone to help bring this or bring that in order to feel less miserable. Whenever that happens, we all run away. Not because we refuse to help him, but because he wants us to stand there doing nothing while he works. So my sister is taking refuge in the kitchen and is plunging her hands in flour to slowly make a cake. My mother has suddenly discovered that she's missing something or other and has rushed out to shop, saying she'll be gone out for an hour or so. And as for me, I'm in my bedroom playing the electric guitar with my amplifier at maximum volume. So this is again describing the exact series of facts, but in a slightly coordinated manner to make it a little more interesting, right? So this is what we should try and do in an introduction. Let's now move to methods. You have to set word limits to yourself. Statistics. If you have employed statistics, methods of analysis, mention those. And if there are any special approvals that you procured for handling samples or clinical samples, for example, mention those also in the methods. There's one other thing that you can consider including in your methods, your special choices. Because this is going to be a very boring description of what you did, giving units, numbers. Let's say you have done a slight tweak to your protocol, which worked very well in your case, a traditional protocol that was not working, but you had to employ a certain tweak to your protocol, which is not great, but it worked reproducibly for you, and it helped you get the data that you were looking for. It was a special choice in your case, right? So try to highlight these as much as possible so that it makes this section of the manuscript a little less monotonous. Avoid redundant publication. Avoid redundancy within your publication and also across publications. Don't have a particular data set where you write a short report out of it and then make minor tweaks to it and then send it to a different journal in a different form. Avoid redundancy in publication. Plagiarism is a strict no-no. Data manipulation. Don't fabricate falsified data. Keep away from bad grammar, formatting errors, and typos, misspellings. Don't bring in personal anecdotes. Keep it absolutely professional. Right? It's an elegant piece of document that has to be high standard, of high quality, universally understandable and appreciable. So don't bring in personal anecdotes. So let's say you take care of all these aspects. There's a very high chance that your manuscript is going to be rejected. We should get into terms with that, right? And generally, rejections come together with a lot of criticism, and all criticism can be categorized under one of these categories. Criticism with respect to importance of the topic, study design, interpretation of findings, and overall presentation. Insignificant research question. The research question is not important. It's just a rehash of established facts. There's nothing new. It's just stating what is known, but has done a different series of experiments to prove them. And the work is not generalizable or applicable across the area. With study design also gets criticized a lot, right? Because people think they are the best study designers and they don't agree with what other people have designed. No, this is okay, but this should have been done this way. This is okay, but this could have been done. Poor experimental design, no hypothesis. You'll be surprised how many grant applications get this comment. There's no hypothesis. There is vague or inadequate methodology description, mostly because of space constraints, but it is your duty to give clear descriptions. No control or improper control. Inappropriate statistical methods or no statistical analysis at all. Interpretation of findings. This is another thing that reviewers like to pick up on. There is wrong or unsupported conclusions. His conclusion itself is wrong, or okay, he has this conclusion but it's not supported by his data. Inadequate link of findings to practice. Failure to consider alternative explanations. He is very dogmatic in his approach, thinking of only one direction, is not thinking about alternate explanations. And there are unexplained inconsistencies in the data, or unexplained anomalies in the data. So these are also some commonly received criticisms. Overall presentation, every manuscript is going to get some comment on presentation. The English is bad, there is poor organization, too verbose, the figures are shabby, the font size is terrible, and the paper is itself excessively self-promotional. It's talking too much about himself. These are actual comments that reviewers have given. So if you're prepared already that these are possible criticisms and find already ways to avoid these, then that would really help your manuscript preparation. So this is almost my last slide. Aim high. When I say aim high, try to publish as much as possible during your research careers, and look at journals which are widely read. Don't go by numerical impact factors, you don't have to do that, but see if your journal fits in a widely read and reputed journal and aim for that. Cater to the audience. The audience here are 3 levels. One is your editor, then the peer reviewer, and the end reader. You'll have to cater to them in all the documents you submit, to their expectations. Compose a compelling story. It has to be a story at the end of the day. Make it as compelling as possible. And also enhance its appeal with figures, pictorial representation, interesting observations. Pay attention to detail. Again, the detail with respect to format specifications, or with respect to how you present your data, how you label your figures. The devil lies in the details, so pay close attention to detail. Take guidelines seriously, and wherever there is feedback, take it the positive stride. Ensure that every step is ethical, right from study design to author allocation to writing the work itself without any fabrication, falsification, plagiarism, and giving credit to other people. Ensure every step is ethical. And do not fear rejection. You are of course going to get rejected. Rejection is invariable, it's definitely going to happen, but just take it as a positive thing. Try to look at the bright side, because most reviewers out there, most editors out there, they're not nasty. They just want your work to be presented in as good a shape as possible, which is why they say they reject and they give recommendations. Just look at the positive side, learn from the criticism they give, and try to refine your work and fight it out with the reviewer if you can, or if not, move on, go to a next journal, but learn from each rejection and learn from every reviewer's comment. So if you do all that, there are very high chances that your manuscript gets ultimately accepted. Yeah? Okay, so I'll leave with these few useful resources: Writing Scientific Manuscripts, in the Journal of Young Investigators 2005. Although it's a guide for undergraduates, really, it's very useful for graduate scholars as well. Essentials of Writing Biomedical Research Papers by Ziegler. And these are referencing software. I'm sure many of you are already using these for your bibliography sections. So Mendeley and Zotero, I believe, are free, and EndNote is a paid piece of software which comes with a free trial. So these are very robust platforms which would help you organize and present your bibliography in whatever format you choose to do it.